20. Part A: Foundations of Order and Balance, an Early Modern Crisis as Prologue. Chapter 1: Order in Crisis, an Early Modern Spanish Prologue as Foundational Lens. 1.1 Introduction: Order in Crisis, an Experiential Point of Departure. This initial chapter, and indeed the entirety of the first volume of this scholarly endeavor, Pathways of Order, a comparative exploration of balance in Eastern, Babylonian, and Egyptian civilizations, commences its intellectual journey by situating the reader within a specific and evocative historical milieu, that of early modern Spain. This period, particularly as it is reflected and refracted through the enduring literary prism of Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote, is presented here as a poignant historical juncture where a prevailing and long-established system of societal order was perceived by many of its contemporaries to be in a state of profound crisis, a condition perhaps best encapsulated by the descriptive term flailing. The central argument posited at the outset of this investigation is that by first immersing the reader in a concrete, well-documented crisis of meaning, worldview, and societal structure, the enduring and arguably universal human quest for coherence can be more vividly apprehended. Furthermore, such an immersion is intended to cultivate a sharper awareness of the inherent complexities and often under-acknowledged fragilities that characterize any system of order which human societies endeavor to construct and maintain. This initial exploration into the Spanish predicament, therefore, is meticulously designed not as a mere historical recounting for its own sake, nor as a self-contained analysis of early modern Iberian culture. Instead, its primary function is the establishment of a foundational experiential and analytical point of departure. It seeks to set a nuanced and carefully considered stage for the subsequent comparative study of ancient civilizations, whose own intricate engagements with the concepts of order and disorder, balance and imbalance, form the core subject matter of this volume. The narrative of Don Quixote, featuring a protagonist who anachronistically and often calamitously attempts to impose an outdated code of chivalry upon a world rapidly transforming beyond the parameters of such a code, serves as a singularly potent metaphor for the disjunctions, the deep-seated anxieties, and the profound sense of cultural displacement that 21. Frequently accompany periods of significant sociocultural upheaval and systemic transition. The flailing that is identified as characteristic of this era and its literary representation is thus understood to be twofold in its manifestation. It pertains, on the one hand, to the perceived instability, fragmentation, and loss of directive coherence within the broader societal order itself. On the other hand, it equally describes the disoriented and often counterproductive state of the individual who, confronted with such systemic instability, attempts to navigate its complexities or, more ambitiously, to rectify its perceived deficiencies through recourse to outdated paradigms or ill-fitting behavioral models. This dynamic interplay between a societal order under duress and the individual struggle for meaning and agency within that context provides a rich thematic vein that will be explored further. The selection of Cervantes' Spain as this initial focal point is deliberate, stemming from the unique confluence of historical forces at play during that period and the exceptional clarity with which its societal tensions are articulated in Don Quixote. The work itself is more than a literary masterpiece. It is a profound cultural document that captures the zeitgeist of an age grappling with the erosion of old certainties and the uncertain dawn of new realities. The character of Don Quixote, in his tragicomic pursuit of an idealized past, embodies the human tendency to cling to familiar structures of meaning, even as those structures lose their efficacy and relevance. His adventures, or rather misadventures, lay bare the often painful gap between cherished ideals and the stubborn, unyielding nature of lived experience, particularly during times when the very definition of reality seems contested. By beginning with this exploration of a flailing order, the reader is invited to consider the fundamental human need for frameworks of meaning and social organization. The Spanish crisis, with its particular expressions of disillusionment, its contested authorities, and its search for new anchors of stability, provides a relatable, albeit historically specific, entry point into the more abstract and often more challenging task of understanding how ancient civilizations, far removed in time and cultural context, conceptualized their own worlds. The anxieties of early modern Spain, its struggle with change, and the attempts, both successful and misguided, to navigate that change, offer a set of sensitizing concepts. These concepts, derived from a relatively well-documented period, can then be carried forward as heuristic tools when approaching the more fragmentary and often less immediately transparent records of Babylonian, Egyptian, Vedic, and early Chinese. 22. Societies. The experiential grounding offered by the Spanish prologue is thus intended to foster a more empathetic and critically astute engagement with the ancient world's own pathways of order. The palpable sense of an order in jeopardy, as portrayed by Cervantes, prepares the intellectual and even emotional ground for appreciating the immense cultural labor involved in constructing and sustaining the grand edifices of order found in antiquity, and for recognizing the ever-present specter of chaos that haunted those ancient imaginations, just as it haunted the landscape of La Mancha. This initial chapter, therefore, does not merely introduce a historical period. It introduces a way of seeing, a mode of inquiry that values the lessons of crisis as much as the study of stability. Specifices. The Antechamber of Chaos, Cervantes' Prologue, and the Philosophical Metamorphosis of Order. The experiential grounding offered by the Spanish prologue is thus intended to foster a more empathetic and critically astute engagement with the ancient world's own pathways of order. The palpable sense of an order in jeopardy, as portrayed by Cervantes, prepares the intellectual and even emotional ground for appreciating the immense cultural labor involved in constructing and sustaining the grand edifices of order found in antiquity, and for recognizing the ever-present specter of chaos that haunted those ancient imaginations, just as it haunted the landscape of La Mancha. This initial chapter, therefore, does not merely introduce a historical period. It introduces a way of seeing, a mode of inquiry that values the lessons of crisis as much as the study of stability. Through the crucible of a world turned upside down, the reader is invited to undergo a philosophical metamorphosis, a transformation of perspective that is essential for grasping the profound stakes of order itself. At its core, the concept of metamorphosis in philosophy is a meditation on the nature of being and becoming, a dialectic that stretches back to the very origins of Western thought. For the ancient Greeks, the world was not a static entity but a dynamic cosmos, a term that itself implies an ordered and harmonious arrangement. Yet, this order was not a given, it was a precarious. 23. Achievement wrested from a primordial chaos. The pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus of Ephesus posited that the universe is in a state of constant flux, famously asserting that one cannot step into the same river twice. The underlying principle of this perpetual change was the logos, a rational and divine law that governed the transformations of the cosmos. This was not a philosophy of chaos, but of a hidden, unifying order within the process of change itself. In a similar vein, Ovid's Metamorphoses, a cornerstone of Roman literature, presents a world where beings are subject to constant transformation, often at the whim of capricious gods. While on the surface a collection of myths, Ovid's work offers a profound philosophical commentary on the instability of identity and the fluid boundaries between forms. It suggests a universe where the only constant is change, a perspective that can be both liberating and terrifying. Plato, in contrast, sought a more stable foundation for order. His theory of forms posited an eternal and unchanging realm of ideal archetypes, of which the physical world is but a pale and imperfect imitation. The true task of the philosopher, for Plato, was to ascend from the world of transient appearances to the contemplation of these immutable forms, thereby grasping the true nature of reality and the principles of a just and ordered society. The Stoics, too, conceived of a divinely ordered cosmos, permeated by a rational principle, the logos. For them, virtue and happiness consisted in living in accordance with this cosmic nature, accepting the determined course of events with equanimity. These philosophies, in their different ways, represent a monumental effort to establish pathways of order, to map out a cosmos in which humanity could find a meaningful and stable existence, shielded from the formless abyss of chaos. The prologue in Golden Age Spanish literature, and particularly in the hands of Miguel de Cervantes, serves as a unique literary and philosophical threshold. It is more than a mere introduction. It is a space of transition, an antechamber where the reader's expectations are simultaneously invoked and subverted. The conventional captatio benevolentia, the plea for the reader's goodwill, becomes in Cervantes' prologue to Don Quixote an occasion for a self-conscious and ironic meditation on the nature of authorship, truth, and fiction. By feigning inability to produce the customary laudatory sonnets and learned marginalia, Cervantes performs a radical break with the established literary order. He presents his work as a dry, withered, capricious child, born in a prison, a place where every discomfort has its 24 place and every mournful sound its home. This is not merely a humble brag. It is a profound statement about the nature of the world he is about to depict. It is a world stripped of its heroic and idealized veneer, a world where the grand orders of chivalry have become unmoored from reality. The prologue, therefore, acts as a preparatory space for the reader, a place where one is disabused of preconceived notions and prepared for a different kind of engagement with the text, one that is more critical, more attuned to the dissonances and ironies of the world. It initiates a metamorphosis in the reader's own perceptive faculties. The Spain of Cervantes was a nation grappling with a profound crisis of identity, a specter of chaos that was both internal and external. The vast wealth of the New World had brought with it rampant inflation and social dislocation. The rigid structures of the old feudal order were crumbling, giving way to a more fluid and uncertain social landscape. The expulsion of the Jews and the Moriscos had created a society obsessed with notions of limpeza de sangre, purity of blood, a system of classification that was itself a desperate attempt to impose order on a complex and increasingly fragmented reality. The chivalric romances that Don Quixote so avidly consumes represent a nostalgic yearning for a lost age of clear moral certainties and heroic deeds. Yet, in the harsh and unforgiving landscape of La Mancha, these ideals prove to be nothing more than a source of madness and delusion. Don Quixote's quest to resurrect the order of knight-errantry is a tragicomic failure, a testament to the inadequacy of old systems of meaning in a world that has irretrievably changed. His tilting at windmills is not merely a comic trope. It is a powerful metaphor for the clash between an idealized past and a prosaic present, between a defunct order and the chaotic reality that has supplanted it. Cervantes, through his protagonist, holds up a mirror to a society in the throes of a painful and disorienting transformation, a society haunted by the ghost of its own heroic past and uncertain of its future. The influence of Neo-Stoicism in this period, with its emphasis on reason and virtue as a bulwark against the vicissitudes of fortune, can be seen as a philosophical response to this very sense of crisis, a search for a new internal pathway to order in a world where the external signposts have been removed. By immersing the reader in this world of fractured order, Cervantes fosters a deeper appreciation for the immense cultural labor involved in constructing and sustaining the grand edifices of order found in antiquity. When we witness the pathetic and often brutal consequences of Don Quixote's 25 attempts to impose his own anachronistic order on the world, we are reminded of the fragility of all systems of meaning. We come to understand that the philosophical systems of Plato, the Stoics, and even the pre-Socratics were not merely abstract intellectual exercises. They were vital attempts to give shape and coherence to human experience, to build a bulwark against the existential dread of a meaningless and chaotic universe. The palpable sense of an order in jeopardy in Don Quixote allows us to feel the urgency